In the scorched heart of Arizona Territory, 1872, the sun showed no mercy to Whispering Creek Ranch. Mae Calder stood on the sagging porch, narrowing her eyes against the glare as dust devils spun across land that no longer answered to her care. At 32, widowhood had drawn faint lines at the corners of her eyes. Yet it had not dulled the quiet resolve set in her jaw, or the striking beauty that attracted the wrong kind of attention from neighboring ranchers. Half a year had passed since Jonah Calder's body was carried home, broken after being thrown from his horse during a violent storm. 6 months of exhaustion followed rising before daylight to mend fences, tend animals, and battle a drought that seemed determined to erase everything she had left. Mae brushed her fingers through her chestnut hair, noticing the silver threads that had appeared far too early. Loneliness settled on her shoulders like the desert heat. Nights were the worst: the empty chair across the table, the untouched place beside her in bed, where warmth no longer lingered. "You can't keep this ranch on your own, Mrs. Calder," Calder Sheriff Clay. Benton had told her only yesterday, his gaze drifting to the wedding band she still wore. "A woman has no business holding land alone. Sell to Holloway before it all slips away." Rafe Holloway. The name alone tightened her stomach. The cattle baron had been circling her property like a carrion bird, offering insulting prices while his men accidentally let their herds wander onto her fields. Just days earlier she had found her western fence sliced clean through. Holloway's cattle had trampled what little remained of her corn. Mae closed her eyes, the weight of isolation pressing heavier than ever. The creek settlers kept their distance, whispering that a respectable woman would have gone back east after her husband's death. The men either pitied her or waited for her failure. When hoofbeats crunched toward the house, Mae instinctively reached for the rifle Jonah had taught her to use. She wasn't expecting company, and surprise visits rarely brought good news. Mrs. Calder. Earl Dunning from the general store sat stiffly atop his mule. "Brought your supplies." He avoided her gaze as he dismounted. "Thank you, Mr. Dunning. I appreciate it." Mae reached for her coin purse. "There's talk in town," Dunning muttered, glancing toward the barren fields. "Holloway plans to dam the creek upstream. Claims it runs through his land. The creek her only source of water. Without it, her crops and livestock wouldn't survive a week." "He can't do that," she said, though both of them knew he could. The law favored men like Holloway, not widows with thinning resources. Dunning shrugged as he took her coins. "Apache passed through yesterday. Stirred folks up. Territory troopers are hunting them, but they vanished into the hills." He hesitated. Strange times. A woman running a ranch. Savages roaming free. After he left, Mae remained on the porch, watching the sun sink behind distant mesas. The final light caught the dry creek bed, winding through her land like a scar. Holloway wouldn't stop until she was gone. She had no family. Waiting in Boston, no money to start over. This land, harsh, unforgiving, and beautiful, was all that remained of the future she and Jonah had once planned. That night, while coyotes called through the darkness, Mae paced her small kitchen. Lamplight stretched her shadow across the walls of a house meant for laughter. On the table lay a letter from Massachusetts, urging her to return before the wilderness claimed her too. But Boston no longer felt like home. This place did the crimson dawns, the scent of sage after rain, the endless sky that made her feel both small and unbreakable. A reckless idea took hold. At first light, Mae rode into the foothills where Apache were said to camp. Her heart thundered, but her hands stayed firm on the reins. Stories of Apache violence clashed with Jonah's quiet insistence that most were lies told to excuse slaughter. "They know this land better than anyone," he had said. "They respect it." The trail grew rough as the ground rose. Brush gave way to juniper and pine, the air cooling with elevation. Mae paused to drink, scanning the terrain. There were no signs of life yet. She felt watched. Nearly 2 hours in, she pulled her horse to a halt. "I mean no harm," she called into the open land. "I'm looking for work for someone who understands this country." Only wind answered. "I can pay," she added, embarrassed. by the sound of her own voice. Food and shelter, too. She was turning back when a figure stepped from the rocks as if shaped from them. Tall, broad-shouldered, he moved with the silent grace of a hunting cat. Black hair fell in twin braids along a face both severe and striking, high cheekbones set beneath eyes that carried more history than his years. A pale scar traced a hard line from his temple to his jaw, the only mark breaking the smooth copper of his skin. "You ride alone," he said. "Ride." His English was steady, low, unmistakably clear. "Not wise." Mae Calder lifted her chin, spine straightening. "Wisdom doesn't always get a woman fed," she replied evenly. "Sometimes necessity does." Something flashed in his eyes, brief surprise, perhaps even respect. "My name is Mae Calder," she said. "I own land in the valley below, and I need help. Someone who knows how to pull life from dry ground." "Why come to Apache?" he asked. "White men want your land, not to work it." "Because white men want me gone," Mae answered without hesitation. "And because I've heard the Apache know how to catch rain from an empty sky and make corn grow where stone should rule." He studied her in silence, eyes sharp and unblinking, as if weighing the truth of her words against something deeper. The moment stretched, broken only by the soft snort of her horse. At last he spoke. "My name is Ayon." He tapped the worn cavalry jacket draped over traditional leggings. "It means one who walks between worlds," he added quietly. "Seems fitting." Mae nodded, unsure what response such a truth required. "Your neighbors will not welcome Apache on your land," Ayon said. "They already want me." "Run out," Mae replied. "Their approval won't save me." For the first time, the hint of something unreadable crossed his face. "Courage alone won't make crops grow," he said. "Will you listen?" "Yes," Mae answered. "Will you help me?" Ayon remained still so long, she thought he might refuse. Then he gave a single nod. "I will come," he said. "Not for money, for the land." His gaze drifted past her toward the valley below. "It was Apache land once," he added. "It remembers." That moment marked the most dangerous decision of Mae Calder's life, one that would stir whispers across the territory and reshape her future. The ride back to the ranch passed in taut silence, heavy with questions neither voiced. Ayon rode beside her, a presence both steady and unsettling. More than once Mae caught him scanning the land, the circling hawk overhead, the faint tracks crossing dust, the way grasses bent where water once flowed unseen. "Your land is thirsty," he said at last, "but water still moves beneath it." "The old channels," Mae asked, hope flickering alive. "Can you show me?" He nodded. "The earth speaks," Ayon said. Few bothered to listen. As they crested the final ridge, overlooking Whispering Creek Ranch, Mae saw her land differently. Not broken, but waiting. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the valley. Smoke curled faintly from her chimney. "That's strange," Mae murmured. "I left no fire." "Someone is there," Ayon said softly, his hand drifting toward the knife at his belt. Mae's fingers closed around her rifle. "Holloway riders," she muttered. They approached with care, dismounting short of the house. Mae stepped forward first, rifle raised. Ayon moved behind her without sound. Sheriff Clay Benton sat on her porch, carving a sliver of wood. He looked up slowly, his expression tightening at the sight of Ayon. "Mrs. Calder," he drawled. "Looks like the rumors are true." "What rumors would those be?" Sheriff Mae asked, her aim steady. "That you've lost your sense," Benton replied, eyes shifting to Ayon. "Riding into Apache territory alone and bringing one back." "This is Ayon," Mae said firmly. "My ranch hand. I hired him for his knowledge of desert farming." The sheriff spat into the dirt. "That what you're calling it now?" "State your business," Sheriff Mae snapped, "or leave my land. Message from Rafe Holloway." Benton said, holding out an envelope. "He's raised his offer. Calls it his last courtesy before things turn unpleasant." "Holloway's threats don't concern me," Mae replied coldly. They should, Benton said with a shrug. Men like him don't enjoy refusal, especially not for savage help. Thank you for the delivery, Mae said. Good day. After the sheriff rode off, Mae turned to find Ayon watching her closely. You know what you've done, he said quietly. Yes, Mae answered, shoulders squared. I chose to fight for what's mine. They won't forgive it. A white woman and an Apache, he said. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mae replied. Only survival. She gestured toward the barn. There's a room you can use. Small but dry. Ayon shook his head. I sleep under the open sky, he said. Walls. He trailed off, eyes distant, as if stone and timber held memories he would not name. He made a small dismissive motion with his hand as though pushing something unseen away. Too much like the camps, he said quietly. As night settled in, Mae Calder prepared a modest supper of beans and cornbread. She didn't expect company, but Ayon joined her at the table without a word. Despite his size, his movements were measured and light. They ate in silence, yet it carried no tension. It felt reflective, like two travelers weighing the road ahead. Later, while Mae rinsed dishes under the lamplight, she noticed Ayon through the window. He stood alone in the yard, face lifted toward the stars, lips moving, a murmur she could not hear, perhaps a prayer. The sight tugged at her chest in a way she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't pity, it was recognition, the quiet understanding of someone who carried loss as she did. Mae turned away, aware she was witnessing something private. Tomorrow would bring fresh trouble, fresh resistance. Yet for the first time in 6 months, determination was no longer her only companion. Hope, thin, stubborn, and alive, had taken root inside her. Dawn found Mae already awake. Her sleep had been fractured by dreams of Jonah and the weight of the choice she'd made. She pulled back the faded curtain and scanned the land, a sudden fear rising that Ayon had vanished during the night. Then she saw him along the eastern fence, unmoving, watching the sunrise wash the desert in amber and gold. Would he stay? Or was this only a pause before he moved on? She couldn't fault him if he left. Bringing an Apache onto her ranch had placed them both squarely in danger. Still, something in his eyes the day before, an unspoken recognition of standing alone against forces meant to crush you, gave her hope. Mae dressed quickly and stepped outside, gathering eggs from the henhouse as she went. When she reached the fence, he was gone. Disappointment flickered until a deep voice spoke behind her. The soil remembers water. She turned to find Ayon, crouched, earth crumbling slowly between his fingers. In the morning light, she noticed details she'd missed before: the careful beadwork on his knife sheath, the eagle feather bound into one braid, the way sunlight caught in his eyes, revealing flecks of amber within the dark. The creek's been dry for months, Mae said. On the surface. He gestured toward the distant hills, then knelt, pressing his palm flat against the ground. Beneath it, he said, water still moves. Like memory, he added. Buried but alive. By the 3rd week of Ayon's presence, Mae knew she had made the right choice, no matter the cost. The Holloway riders began passing more often, watching from a distance. Sheriff Clay Benton stopped by under the pretense of concern, warning her about sheltering an Apache rumored to have fought cavalry units. I'm sheltering no one, Mae told him firmly. I hired a skilled hand who respects land better than certain cattle barons. What she didn't say was how deeply Ayon had already altered the ranch. He located underground springs feeding the creek, carved channels to guide water into the thirstiest fields, and showed her how to plant corn beans and squash together methods his people had used for generations. The 3 sisters, he explained one afternoon, his hands steady as he demonstrated. Corn lifts the beans, squash shades the soil. Together they survive. The simplicity of it struck her like a bell in a silent room. How long had she tried to stand alone when even plants understood strength came from connection? They worked from sunrise to dusk, speaking little. Ayon wasn't a man of many words yet. His silence carried presence, not absence. It was nothing like the hollow quiet after Jonah's death when neighbors brought casseroles but wouldn't meet her gaze. To her surprise, Mae found herself talking again. At first it was practical ditches. Jonah had mapped fields that might recover, but gradually memories surfaced. Boston winters. Books she still kept by her bed. Meeting Jonah at a lecture on Western expansion, their hurried courtship that scandalized her family. Ayon listened without interrupting, and when he did speak, his words cut cleanly to the truth. One evening, resting on the porch after mending fences, Mae caught him studying her. "Why do you stay?" he asked. "Your people believe a woman should not live alone, should not work land." Mae looked toward the mountains, purple under the fading sky. "This land was a promise Jonah and I made," she said, fingers brushing her wedding band. "Without him, it's still my future, just not the one I planned." "You still grieve," Ayon said. It wasn't a question. Mae nodded. "Some days more than others." "My people say grief is a river," he replied. "It carves its own way. Fight it and it only cuts deeper." Something in his voice made her look at him more closely. "You've lost someone too." Ayon's gaze drifted past the hills, fixed on something far beyond the land before them. The silence that followed was heavy but not uneasy, filled instead with stories neither had yet spoken. "My wife," he said at last. "My son." His voice was steady, almost distant. "Soldiers came to our village while I was hunting. 3 winters ago." The simplicity of his words carried a crushing weight. Tears welled in Mae's eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I wanted to die as well." Ayon continued. "I followed the soldiers. I killed 3 before they caught me." His fingers brushed the scar along his face. "They left me for dead. But the earth said not yet, so I live." They sat together as night gathered, their shared losses hanging between them, like the first fireflies blinking in the dark. There were no comforts offered, no forced words, only the quiet recognition of wounds still closing. That night, Mae slept more deeply than she had in months. At dawn, Ayon was gone. Mae told herself it was for the best. He had given her tools, knowledge enough to save the ranch perhaps. She should be grateful. Yet as she moved through her morning chores, feeding chickens, stitching a tear in her work dress, pulling weeds from the new rows, she found herself listening, watching the hills where he had first appeared. By midday, unease settled in her chest. Had Sheriff Clay Benton taken him? Had he simply moved on? She was brushing her mare in the barn when footsteps sounded. Ayon stood in the doorway, a deer slung across his shoulders, his expression unreadable. "You came back," Mae said, unable to hide the relief in her voice. He tilted his head slightly. "I said I would help. The work is not finished." That evening they roasted venison over an open fire. Ayon showed her how every part mattered, the meat for food, the hide for leather, the bones for tools. "Nothing wasted," he said as he worked. "Everything honored. This is how my people lived. We take only what we need. We thank what sustains us." Firelight danced across his face, softening the edges that usually guarded him. Mae found herself studying details. She had missed the care in his hands, the compassion that surfaced when he spoke of land, the quiet dignity with which he bore his pain. He looked up suddenly, meeting her eyes. "You see me," he said. The words carried more weight than she expected. Not as an Apache, not as a hired hand, not as a threat or a curiosity, but simply as a man. "Yes," Mae whispered. "I see you." Something shifted between them that night, fragile as a shoot, breaking through dry soil, but alive all the same. The days settled into rhythm. They rose with the sun, worked side by side, shared simple meals, and sometimes stories. Ayon spoke of his childhood of Apache ways, of a time before boundaries and camps. Mae told him about Boston, about books she loved, about her first frightening months in Arizona territory. Slowly she noticed the nights no longer ended in tears. The ache of loneliness eased. She caught herself laughing at Ayon's rare, sharp observations, planning not just to survive, but to build. One morning, Mae found a small object beside the coffee pot, a perfectly round stone, polished smooth, banded with red and amber, that glowed in the light. She held it, feeling its warmth. "It speaks of fire beneath the earth," Ayon said from the doorway, "of things that seem solid yet change." "Thank you," Mae said, closing her fingers around it. In the days that followed, more gifts appeared: a grass bird woven with care, a feather marked with signs he said carried messages from the wind, a pouch of herbs to help her sleep. Each one told her he was paying attention to more than just her land. One afternoon, while irrigating the western field, a gunshot split the air. Mae's horse reared, throwing her hard to the ground. Pain flared through her ankle. Before she could gasp, Ayon was there, his body already between her and the sound. In one smooth motion, he lifted her onto his horse and mounted behind her. "Holloway riders," he said grimly, urging the horse forward. "It could have been a hunter," Mae protested, though she knew better. "A warning," Ayon replied. "They don't want your land to thrive." Inside the house, he knelt and examined her ankle with gentle, practiced hands. His fingers were warm, steady. "Not broken," he said. But the danger was no longer a question. "Twisted," Ayon said quietly. He lifted his head so close Mae could see flecks of amber caught in the dark of his eyes. "You trust me to help you," Mae nodded. Her throat tightened, stealing her words. Ayon stepped outside and returned carrying plants she didn't recognize. He crushed the leaves between his palms, mixed them with water, and wrapped the poultice around her ankle using a strip of clean cloth. His touch was steady, careful in a way that felt almost sacred. "Thank you," Mae whispered. He looked at her, then truly looked at her, with an intensity that caught her breath. "I see your tears, Mae Calder," he said. "The ones you hide." The words split something open inside her. No one had ever named that quiet struggle, the way she held herself together by day, saved her grief for the dark, learned to endure in silence. "Your eyes speak what your mouth does not," Ayon added. His hand hesitated, then gently brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. "You are strong," he said, "but strength does not mean the absence of pain." In that moment, under his unwavering gaze, Mae felt understood in a way she hadn't since Jonah's death, perhaps never before. Without thinking, her hand rose and covered his, where it rested against her cheek. "All this time," she said softly, "I believed if I showed weakness, I'd lose everything." "Tears are not weakness," Ayon replied. "Rain is not weakness to the earth. It heals." Mae closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I've been so alone." "Not anymore," he said. His voice carried certainty, solid as stone. When she opened her eyes, he was watching her with an expression that made her heart race. Care, restraint, and something deeper stirred beneath the surface. "Your husband," Ayon said carefully. "He was a good man," Mae answered. "Kind. He believed in this land. And in you," Ayon said, nodding slowly. "He would not want your heart buried with him." The truth settled deep. Jonah had been full of life, of plans, of joy. He would have hated seeing her merely survive. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't." That night, rain tapped against the roof, the first in months, soft and steady, as if the sky itself acknowledged the change taking root below. Mae dreamed not of loss, but of possibility. Of hands strong enough to build and gentle enough to heal. Of eyes that saw past the surface into the soul. For the first time since Jonah's death, she woke without the weight of solitude pressing her chest. The following days passed in a blur of shared labor and quiet awareness. Every glance, every accidental brush of fingers, as tools were exchanged, carried new meaning. They moved around each other carefully, recognizing the current between them, while respecting lines neither was ready to cross. But boundaries like fences require tending, and some forces like water always find their way through. One evening, after expanding irrigation channels to the eastern fields, they returned mud-splattered and satisfied. Green shoots were already pushing through soil that had seemed dead weeks before. "Life returns," Ayon said, studying their work. Mae knew he wasn't only speaking of crops. As dusk deepened into night, they sat side by side on the porch steps, shoulders nearly touching, watching stars emerge one by one across the vast desert sky. The air still carried the scent of rain, mingled with sage and the spices from the rabbit stew they had shared. In Boston, Mae said quietly, "You can barely see the stars. Too many lamps. Too much smoke. How do people live without the sky?" Ayon asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "They find other ways," she said. "Music. Theaters. Crowded streets, full of strangers." He turned toward her. "And you? What makes you feel alive, Mae Calder?" The question lingered. She met his gaze, starlight reflected in his eyes. "This," she whispered. "This land. This moment." She gathered her courage. "And you?" Ayon didn't look away. Slowly giving her every chance to pull back, he reached for her hand. His palm was warm, calloused from work, his fingers intertwined with hers. "Since my family died," he said, voice low and steady, "I believed my heart was buried with them." He glanced at their joined hands. "But with you, it beats again. Stronger." Tears filled Mae's eyes, not from sorrow, but from the realization that what was growing between them was real. Not a replacement for what they'd lost, but something new. "I'm afraid," she admitted, "to feel again, to lose again." Ayon lifted his free hand, cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. "My people say to truly live is to risk pain," he said. "Without risk there is no joy, no growth." Under the silver light of stars and the rising quarter moon, Mae looked into the eyes of the man who had stepped from wilderness into her life, the man who understood her silences, who saw beyond her careful armor to the woman beneath. And she did not look away. This was a man whose scars, both seen and unseen, ran as deep as her own, different in shape but equal in weight. "Stay," Mae whispered. "Not only for the land, for me." Ayon did not answer with words. Instead, he leaned forward and pressed his lips gently to her forehead. A blessing, a vow, a beginning. They remained on the porch deep into the night, speaking in low voices about ordinary matters and life-altering truths. Hands clasped, shoulders touching the distance between them, finally gone. When a coyote cried out from the distant hills, its call no longer sounded lonely to Mae, but like a song of reunion, of finding one's pack after too long alone. Tomorrow would bring hardship. Rafe Holloway's threats, the judgment of the creek settlers, the unforgiving demands of desert farming. But for this single night beneath the endless Arizona sky, Mae Calder felt something she had believed lost forever. She felt home. The peace Mae and Ayon found could not hold back the world for long. Reality returned with the first light of dawn, just as they knew it would. The morning after their quiet promise, Mae woke to the thunder of hoofbeats approaching the ranch. Too many for a friendly call. She dressed quickly, fingers clumsy as she fastened her blouse, then moved to the window. 4 riders. Dust rose behind them like a warning. She recognized Sheriff Clay Benton's hat and Rafe Holloway's pale palomino. Ayon was already in the doorway when she turned. His expression was calm but alert. "I heard them," he said. Their eyes met, and in that brief look lived concern, resolve, and something deeper neither had yet named. "They won't take kindly to what they suspect," Mae said, quietly reaching for her father's old shotgun. Ayon's hand closed gently over hers. "Let me speak first. It's my land," Mae replied firm. "My choice." We faced them together. Something like pride crossed his face. He nodded once. Together. They both knew their fragile calm was ending. The warning shot fired days earlier had only been the beginning. Within a week, newly repaired fences were cut again. One morning they found 2 of her best hens with their necks snapped. Another day, spoiled meat was dumped into her well. "They're trying to drive us out," Mae said, her voice tight with anger as they worked to purge the tainted water. Ayon studied her carefully, her choice of words. "Us, not me. Holloway fears what we are building," he said. "A success he cannot claim." The harassment escalated. Threatening notes nailed to fence posts. A dead coyote left on the porch, its throat slit clean. Each morning brought proof of visitors who came only after dark. Yet despite every attempt to break them, the land answered their labor. The garden thrived under Ayon's care. The irrigation channels kept crops alive even as neighboring ranches withered beneath the summer sun. Ayon taught Mae which desert plants could be eaten, adding variety to their meals and freeing them from dependence on town supplies. The desert provides, he said one evening, showing her how to prepare prickly pear fruit. If you know how to ask. With each small victory, Mae felt herself changing. She no longer startled at sudden sounds. She stopped apologizing for standing her ground in her own home. She learned to read tracks, to sense weather shifts in the clouds, to trust her instincts. And through it all, Ayon watched her with those steady, knowing eyes. The distance he once kept faded. His hand lingered longer when passing tools. His rare smile came more easily. At dusk, they often sat shoulder to shoulder on the porch, watching the sky burn with impossible colors. He left small offerings for her, to find a carved wooden bird, a wildflower. Beside her coffee cup, a smooth stone speckled like the night sky. Mae kept every one. Their evenings stretched late into lamplit hours. Ayon spoke of Apache ceremonies, the wisdom of the Apache elders, the freedom before reservation lines confined his people. Mae shared memories of Boston's cobbled streets, her mother's garden, the books that once carried her far beyond her sheltered youth. Neither spoke of the unseen boundary still between them, though its presence hummed like thunder waiting to break. One sweltering afternoon, as dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising the first true rain in months, Sheriff Clay Benton rode in with 2 Benton deputies. "Mrs. Calder," he called without dismounting. "Need a word." Mae set down her tools, brushing soil from her hands. Ayon appeared beside her, silent and steady at her shoulder. "Sheriff," she said evenly, "what brings you out here?" Benton's gaze flicked to Ayon, then back to Mae. "Had a complaint. Holloway claims you've been diverting water from the creek. Says it's hurting his cattle operation." "The creek runs through my land," Mae replied calmly. "We've simply ensured the water isn't wasted. He also claims your worker was seen trespassing on his property." Ayon did not move, but Mae felt the tension in him. "That's a lie," she said, her voice firm and unyielding. "Ayon hasn't left this land except to hunt," Mae said, evenly. "And never toward Holloway's range." Sheriff Clay Benton's expression tightened. "The Army's been asking questions," he replied. "Reports of an Apache matching his description, one who escaped custody after killing soldiers." Mae's heart hammered, though her voice stayed steady. "Is there a warrant, Sheriff?" "Not yet," Benton admitted. "But there will be. Thought I'd offer a warning, seeing as you're a respectable Christian woman." "You should send him off," the sheriff continued, "before trouble finds you." "That trouble isn't mine," Mae said coolly. "Thank you for your concern." "Is that all?" Benton studied her. Then Ayon, "Folks are talking, Mrs. Calder, about what kind of arrangement you have here. Your husband's been gone 8 months. Not fitting for a widow to keep a man on her land, especially an Apache." Heat rose to Mae's cheeks, not from shame, but anger. "Ayon is my ranch hand," she said firmly. "What people gossip about reflects on them, not me. Just protecting your reputation." "My reputation is not your concern," Mae replied. "Now, unless you have official business, I have work to do." After the Benton deputies rode off, the quiet rushed back in. Mae turned to Ayon, fear tightening her throat. "You should leave," she said. "They'll return with papers and leave you to Holloway." His eyes flashed. "No, I won't see you arrested or worse because of me." "It is my choice," Ayon said, stepping closer. His voice lowered. "I came for the land. I stay for you." Thunder rolled over the far mountains. What the sheriff said, Mae began carefully. "About the soldiers." "I told you," Ayon said, unflinching. "I killed the men who destroyed my family. I do not deny it." Mae nodded slowly. "I understand vengeance." "It was not vengeance alone," he said, watching the storm build. "It was justice no court would give." The sky darkened as rain began to fall, fat drops striking dust, releasing the sharp scent of creosote and renewal. "We should go inside," Mae said, though neither moved. The rain thickened, soaking them within moments. Mae tipped her face upward, letting the cool water wash away the heat in her skin. When she looked back at Ayon, his gaze held her open, steady, changed. "You are beautiful," he said simply. Rain streamed down his face, darkening his shirt. Mae couldn't tell who moved first. Only that suddenly, his hands were warm at her cheeks, hers firm at his shoulders, and the world narrowed to the sound of rain and the closeness between them. Their kiss was brief, but it carried months of restraint, of unspoken understanding, of careful distance finally set aside. When they drew apart, breathless, Ayon rested his forehead against hers. "I knew," he murmured, "the day you rode alone into the hills. My heart recognized yours." Mae traced the scar along his cheek. "I was afraid," she said softly, "afraid to feel again." "Fear and courage share the same lodge," he replied. "You cannot have one without the other." Lightning split the sky, throwing his face into sharp relief. Strength and tenderness held together. In that instant, Mae understood what had been growing quietly between them. "I love you," she whispered, words both frightening and freeing. "I didn't believe I could again." "And I love you," Ayon said, "beyond words." They reached the house as thunder cracked overhead. Inside, rain dripping to the floor, they stood in the dim light, close, steady, certain. Mae reached for his hand. "Stay," she said, "not as my worker, not as my shield, as my equal." "As yours," he answered, closing his fingers around hers. "And you as mine." That night, as rain drummed against the roof and lightning traced shadows across the walls, Mae Calder and Ayon remained together, discovering not urgency but trust, not escape but belonging, while the storm passed and the land drank deeply of what it had long been denied. Her fingertips followed the quiet stories, etched in scars across his skin. In the shelter of each other's arms, they shaped something new, something sacred. Later, lying tangled in sheets with her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, Mae felt a missing piece return, one she had believed gone for good. "What will we do?" she asked softly. "When they come back," Ayon's fingers moved gently through her hair. "We will stand," he said, "together." Outside, the storm still raged, but for the first time in years, neither felt alone in the dark. Morning arrived clean and sharp, the kind of blue sky that follows desert rain. Mae woke to find Ayon already awake, propped on one elbow, studying her as if she might vanish. "I feared you were a dream," he murmured, his hand tracing the curve of her shoulder. Mae smiled and touched his face. "No dream," she said, surprised by how natural it felt to wake beside him, as if her body had always known his. Reality pressed in soon enough. As they dressed, their talk turned practical. "Rafe Holloway won't stop," Mae said, pinning up her hair. "And now the army's asking questions." Ayon nodded, grave. "We have choices. We could leave," she offered the words, painful. "Begin somewhere else, and let them win." He shook his head. "This land is worth fighting for. So is what we're building." He met her gaze. "But it must be your choice. I won't bring danger to you." Mae crossed to him, taking his hands. My choice was made the day I rode into the hills looking for you. I just didn't know it yet." Their fingers intertwined her bare skin against the memory of a ring once worn, a contrast that held all they risked. "Then we prepare," Ayon said, "and we do not show fear." The weeks that followed held a strange balance. Days of vigilance, nights of tenderness. They reinforced doors and windows, mapped escape routes, and hid supplies in careful caches. They also kept the land alive, refusing to let fear dictate their days. Their bond deepened. Mae discovered the quiet humor behind Ayon's reserve, the gentleness beneath his warrior's calm. Ayon marveled at her resilience, her refusal to harden despite hardship. Each night, they shared not only closeness, but hopes tentative, at first, then braver. When harvest improved, perhaps more land. Perhaps in time, the Creek settlers' prejudice would soften. Perhaps one day, a family of their own. The dreams were delicate, beautiful, and fragile as a spider's web. Dangerous, too. Yet they held to them, knowing hope itself was an act of defiance. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, Ayon placed a slender band in Mae's palm, woven horsehair threaded with silver. "Among my people," he said quietly, "when two souls choose the same path, they exchange a token." Mae's breath caught as he slid the band onto her finger where her wedding ring once rested. She had set Jonah's ring aside weeks earlier, not in forgetting, but in acknowledgement that her heart had found a new home. "It's beautiful," she whispered, turning her hand as the silver caught the light. "I have nothing to give you." Ayon's hand settled over her heart. "You already have." That night held a new stillness, commitment, and futures, intertwined despite the odds. In the moonlight, Mae traced the lines of Ayon's face, memorizing every plane and expression. "No matter what happens," she murmured this, "us is real. Worth everything." His eyes, bright in the dark, held hers. "True wealth," he said, "is not what we own, but what binds us to land, to each other, to the spirits that connect all living things. Then we are rich." Mae replied, her heart full, glass shattered. Ayon was on his feet at once, reaching for the knife beside the bed. "Stay down," he ordered, moving silently to the window. Outside, orange light flickered against the barn wall. The sharp smell of smoke poured through the broken pane. "Fire!" Mae gasped, pulling on her clothes. They ran outside to find the barn, ablaze, flames already devouring the dry timber. Working with frantic urgency, they freed the horses and dragged what equipment they could clear of the flames. The barn itself was lost. As they stood watching it collapse in sparks and smoke, Ayon's arm settled around Mae's shoulders. Then hoofbeats thundered in from the direction of town. Sheriff Clay Benton rode into the yard with his Benton deputies, followed by Rafe Holloway and a dozen of his Holloway riders. "Tragic accident." Holloway called, his voice thick with false concern. "Lanterns and hay, dangerous mix." "This was no accident," Mae shot back, anger shaking her words. "And you know it." The sheriff dismounted, uneasy but resolved. "Mrs. Calder, step away from him. We're taking the Apache in." Mae felt Ayon's arm tighten, steady and protective. "On what charges?" she demanded. "Murder of territory troopers," Benton said. "Trespass, cattle theft." He shifted his hand, resting near his pistol. "There's a reward, dead or alive." "Convenient timing," Mae replied sharply, her thoughts racing. "Just when my land finally starts producing again." Holloway's smile never reached his eyes. "This has nothing to do with your pitiful ranch. This is about justice, civilization." His gaze dragged over her with contempt. "Your behavior has shocked decent folks, but I'm generous. I'll still buy your land, even pay your fare back east where a lady like you belongs." "I belong exactly where I stand," Mae said coldly. "And you'll leave my property. Your husband would be ashamed." Holloway sneered, his mask slipping. "Consorting with a savage, letting good Christian land rot." Mae felt Ayon tense, then squeeze her hand restraint, not fear. Slowly, deliberately, she took Jonah Calder's wedding band from her pocket and held it up to the firelight. My husband believed in justice and honest work, she said clearly. Values. Ayon lives by far more than you ever will, Mr. Holloway. She slid the ring back into her pocket. Leave. Now. Holloway's face darkened. Take him, he ordered. And the woman too if she interferes. As riders surged forward, Ayon pulled Mae back toward the house. Inside, he said, we planned for this. They had. Weeks of preparation came rushing back. Mae grabbed her rifle while Ayon took position at the window. I won't let them take you, she said, checking her rounds. Ayon met her eyes. Nor I you. Shots cracked the night splintering wood. They returned fire carefully, aiming to drive back, not kill. They'll try to smoke us out, Ayon warned. Fire or smoke. A boot hit the roof. Then another. The back tunnel, Mae said urgently. They dropped into the root cellar, pulling packs from the hidden cache as smoke crept downward. In the dim light, Ayon caught her in a fierce embrace. Whatever happens, he said low, remember you are the bravest woman I've ever known. And you, Mae whispered against his lips, are the man who taught me how to live again. The escape was brutal, tight earth-burning lungs, the pounding certainty that discovery meant death for Ayon and perhaps for her. But the tunnel opened where it should, into the creek bed. 2 horses waited beneath the willows. Above them, black smoke poured from the ranch. The home Mae had shared with Jonah, the place where she and Ayon had found each other. Tears burned, but she forced them back. South, Ayon asked, mounting. Mae looked once more at the flames, at everything she had fought to save, then at Ayon's steady profile, the eyes that had always seen her truth. In that moment she understood home was no longer a place. It's you, she said, taking his hand. Wherever you are, that's where I belong. They rode hard into the night. Mae did not look back again. Ahead lay danger, uncertainty, and hardship, but also freedom. Possibility. Love. The kind worth risking everything for. The kind that, like desert wildflowers, after rain could turn scorched ground into something alive. They rode until the fire's glow faded. Mae's heart ached with every mile, but her resolve did not waver. Beside her, Ayon moved like a shadow, his knowledge guiding them true. Dawn found them high in the foothills where Ayon led them into a hidden canyon he had known since youth. A small spring spilled from the rock, clear and cold enough for them and their spent horses. Ayon helped Mae down from the saddle. Rest, he told her quietly. Her legs trembled, her body unused to such relentless riding. We're safe for now. As Mae drank from her cupped hands, the truth settled over her like weight. They were fugitives. She by choice. Ayon by the cruelty of a justice that had never recognized his humanity. What happens next? She asked, watching him build a low, nearly smokeless fire with practiced ease. We have paths, Ayon said, steady despite exhaustion. We could cross into Mexico. The patrols are thin. Or head north toward the territories. Mae studied his face in the growing light, the lines carved by sun and hardship, the quiet dignity that had drawn her in from the start, the softness that appeared only when he looked at her. And if we stay, she asked, if we fight for what's ours? A faint smile touched his mouth. Always the warrior, he said softly. Even when the battle looks lost. Is it lost, Amir? Mae stepped closer, taking his hands. Rafe Holloway has money and influence, but he also has enemies. My cousin's husband works for the territorial governor in Santa Fe. If we can reach him. Present proof. Ayon's expression hardened. The white man's law has never favored my people. Then we make it favor truth, Mae replied. Holloway bribes officials, but he doesn't own everyone. We have evidence. The forged water claims, the threats, the fire. It's a dangerous gamble, Ayon warned. For you as much as me. Mae lifted her chin. Some things are worth the risk. They rested through the day, planning a northern route to Santa Fe. It would mean passing through settled land where Ayon's Apache blood would draw suspicion, and Mae would be recognized as a woman who had defied every rule Whispering Creek respected. But living forever hunted was worse. That night beneath a sky crowded with stars, Mae traced the contours of Ayon's face. I lost my home, she whispered, but I didn't lose everything. Ayon caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Home is not walls and roofs. My people know this. Home is where the spirit rests, where the heart finds peace. The truth of it settled deep. The ranch was gone, but what mattered had survived the fire. Their bond, their shared purpose, a love shaped under pressure, not comfort. They knew the calm would not last. Within days, they would need to move over 300 miles through land that would grow more dangerous with every rumor of their escape. The next morning, as they packed what little they had, Ayon spoke carefully. We could separate. I draw too much attention. You could reach Santa Fe more easily alone. No, Mae said without hesitation. We stay together. I won't let you be hunted while I walk free, Mae. Together, she said firmly. Always. Their journey was brutal. They traveled by night, hid by day, and twice barely avoided search parties. Mae's resolve never faltered. Neither did Ayon's watchful protection. On the 8th night, camped deep within a narrow canyon, Ayon produced a slender band, woven of horsehair and silver, more intricate than the one lost during their escape. Among my people, he said quietly, when two souls choose the same road, they exchange a sign of that bond. Mae's breath caught as he slid the band onto her finger where Mae Calder's ring had once rested. I have nothing to give you, she whispered. Ayon placed his hand over her heart. You already have. They reached Santa Fe 2 weeks after fleeing the ranch. Mae's cousin's husband, Miles Carrick, was stunned by their condition and story. But the documents Mae had saved spoke clearly. Holloway's threats forged water rights and records of intimidation. Mae's testimony filled the gaps. It won't be easy, Carrick warned. Holloway has allies. And he glanced at Ayon. Prejudice runs deep. So does the truth, Mae replied. And that's on our side. Governor Samuel Cross listened. The investigation uncovered not only Holloway's persecution of Mae, but a pattern of corruption, seized ranches, falsified claims, illegal encroachment on Apache lands. As for the charges against Ayon, they were complex. The soldiers had died, but testimony from Apache witnesses revealed the attack on his village had been unprovoked, driven by a reckless lieutenant's ambition, not lawful orders. 3 months later, Mae and Ayon stood on a hill overlooking what remained of Whispering Creek Ranch. Rafe Holloway faced prosecution, his power unraveling as others he had crushed stepped forward. The land was scarred, but justice at last had begun to take root. Governor Samuel Cross, recognizing the injustice Ayon had endured, granted him a rare pardon on the condition that he help foster more peaceful relations with the remaining free Apache bands. It will never be the same, Mae Calder said, standing amid the blackened stones of the old house, the fields now choked with weeds. No, Ayon agreed, his arm settling around her waist. It will be different. Better. The land grant the governor awarded them lay 50 miles north, a sheltered valley with year-round water and deep fertile soil, far from Rafe Holloway's former reach. Word traveled fast. Folks were already saying that Mae Calder and her Apache husband were hiring fair wages, fair treatment, no matter a person's name or blood. You're certain? Mae asked, turning in Ayon's arms to face him. Building again meant risk. It always did. His eyes held hers, steady and warm, his hand lifting to her cheek. My people believe true strength doesn't come from standing alone. It comes from roots that grow together, like the 3 sisters you planted. Mae smiled and pressed her palm over his heart. Then let's plant new roots, together. They rode away from the ashes of the past toward the promise ahead. Mae watched the man beside her, the warrior who taught her to stand, the healer who had stitched her spirit back together, the one who saw her tears when no one else did. In the gold of late afternoon, his profile looked eased for the first time since those early weary weeks. Vigilance had softened into a quiet, watchful peace. He caught her gaze and smiled once, a rare thing, now easy lighting his eyes and quickening her pulse. "What are you thinking?" he asked, guiding his horse closer. "That some fires only destroy," she said, "but others transform. Like desert plants that won't seed until the flames pass." Ayon nodded understanding, as he always did. From ashes, new life. 10 years later. Whispering Pines Ranch flourished in the northern valley. Orchards climbed the slopes. Grain fields rippled in the breeze. At the center stood a broad home of stone and timber, built to last. Children's laughter carried across the yard, 2 dark-haired boys racing toward the barn, and a little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's quiet dignity, carefully gathering eggs from the henhouse. Mae stood on the porch, her heart full to the point of ache. At 42 her beauty had ripened, not faded. The silver in her hair looked less like intrusion, and more like a crown earned. Life hadn't been easy. Prejudice loosened its grip slowly, and there had been battles legal and otherwise to secure their place. Each trial only tightened the bonds that held them. Ayon came to stand beside her, moving with the same silent grace that had first caught her eye. Time had traced silver through his black hair and deepened the lines around his eyes, but his strength and the depth of his love for her remained undiminished. "The Harper family has arrived," he said, nodding toward the approaching wagon, "and the Delgado family is right behind them." Mae smiled. The monthly gathering had become tradition, neighbors sharing food stories and work. What began as practical alliance had grown into real friendship across lines once thought unbridgeable. "Remember when they said it couldn't be done?" Mae mused. "That different cultures could never live in harmony. People fear what they don't understand," Ayon said, finding her hand. "Until someone shows them another way." Their eldest son Caleb, named in honor of the past without being bound by it, ran to greet the newcomers. At 9 he carried his father's grace and his mother's easy warmth, shifting naturally between English, Spanish, and Apache as he welcomed their guests. "He'll be a bridge builder," Ayon said quietly, pride in his voice. Their younger son Nash, 7 and more reserved, lingered near the house, observing everything with sharp, thoughtful eyes. Already he showed his father's gift for the land, spending hours in the gardens and orchards, gentle hands learning patience. And then there was Ivy, their unexpected blessing born when Mae was nearly 40. At 2 she was fearless and determined, raven-haired and stubborn-chinned, a small force of nature. Mae squeezed Ayon's hand. Overwhelmed by the road that had led them here from a desperate widow, hiring a stranger, to fugitives, chasing justice, to respected ranchers, building community on fairness and shared purpose. "When I rode into the hills that day," Mae said softly, "I was looking for someone to save my land. I never imagined finding someone who would save my soul." Ayon turned to her, his expression calm and certain. "You saved yourself, Mae Calder. I only walked beside you." As twilight settled over the valley, the gathering came alive, music and laughter mingling with the aromas of many kitchens. Mexican dishes beside Apache preparations. Boston baked beans next to sourdough from German neighbors. Children played without noticing the divisions that once kept adults apart, while the valley breathed alive, rooted and whole. Elders traded stories that carried memory forward while opening space for new understanding. Young couples, some of them crossing old racial lines after watching Mae Calder and Ayon build a life together, spun to fiddle tunes beneath hanging lanterns. Mae found herself talking with Lucia Delgado, whose family had been among the first to work the ranch, back when whispers still followed the Apache man and the white woman. Did you ever imagine this? Lucia asked, motioning toward the thriving circle of neighbors. Back when you were running from Rafe Holloway. Mae's eyes drifted across the yard to Ayon, deep in conversation with John Wilson about water flow and ditch grades. Even after 10 years, the sight of him set her pulse racing. I hope, she said truthfully. But hope is one thing. She paused, taking in the scene, families of every background, sharing food, children, inventing games that blended traditions, land prospering under shared care. This is more than I dared to dream. Later, as the gathering thinned and wagons rolled away with hugs and promises to return, Mae and Ayon strolled hand in hand through the orchard. Apple blossoms perfumed the night, pale petals glowing in moonlight. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Staying with me when you could have gone back to your people. Ayon's fingers, laced with hers, their wedding bands, his silver hers, a durable weave of horsehair and metal touching. My people say home isn't a place, he replied. It's the hearts that understand yours. He turned to her, the same steadfast love in his eyes as the day they chose each other against the world. You are my home, Mae. Always. From the house came their children's voices, Caleb calling that Ivy refused the bedtime, Nash begging for one more story. The ordinary music of family life, once unimaginable to them both. We should go in, Mae said, reluctant to break the spell. In a moment, Ayon murmured, drawing her close. First this. His kiss still carried the power to hush the world. Strong, sure hands cupped her face with the same reverence he'd shown on that first rain-soaked day when they finally named what was growing between them. When they parted, Mae rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady drum of his heart. Who would have thought, she whispered, that hiring an Apache to tend my land would lead to someone who saw the tears no one else did? Ayon's arms tightened, and who would have thought a widowed rancher would look past a warrior's scars to the wounded heart beneath? They walked back toward the warm spill of lamplight and the voices of their children. Behind them, apple blossoms drifted like snow, laying down promises of future harvests and joys to come. The road had not been easy. There were losses and sacrifices, fights won and lost. But as Mae Calder and Ayon crossed the threshold of the home they built together, they knew every step had been worth it. They had found not just love but understanding, not just passion but partnership, not just shelter but true belonging. In a land once divided by difference, they had made unity. In a time when prejudice felt immovable, they proved that love could build bridges stronger than hate. Night after night, year after year, they learned the deepest truth. Healing doesn't come from erasing the past, but from shaping a future worth living for. As they climbed the stairs to tuck their children in, Mae caught Ayon's gaze in the soft glow. No words were needed. I see you, her look said. And I see you, his replied. Two worlds, once colliding, now transformed and woven into something new and enduring, living on in their children and the community they raised together, a legacy of courage, persistence, and love that refused to yield. The story of Mae Calder and Ayon may be fiction, but it points to a world many of us hope to see, one where imposed barriers fall away, where love is honest and judgment gives way to character. In their trials and triumphs, we glimpse not only a frontier romance, but a mirror of our own longings, a reminder that when authentic hearts find one another, they can transform lives and communities. May we, like them, choose to see beyond difference, stand for what's right, and build a future where what matters is not origin or color, but the depth of love and the measure of character. In the end, as Mae and Ayon discovered, true home is not a place, it's the hearts that understand yours. Thank you for staying with us to the end. If this story moved you, please like, share, and leave a comment with how it made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe and consider supporting our work so we can continue creating meaningful stories filled with love, redemption, and emotional turns. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another story. Click through and discover more journeys like this one. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voice-over visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work.